I've thought long and hard about the message that I want to share with you today. And what modality did I want to be? Did I want to wax rabbinic? Did I want to just highlight everything that's good about our movement, our synagogues? Did I want to be a downer? And I decided at the end of the day, I wanted to be a truth teller. Because I think if we don't tell each other the truth, we're not going to have the capacity, the knowledge, or the inspiration to become the people and the movement that we profess we wish to be. I settled on this approach mostly because of all the talk about the Consultants Institute, which will be running over the next several days. It reminded me of one of the first experiences I had as CEO when I went on what I called my tshuva tour. Sorry for the sins of the past. Sorry for the sins of the past. Can we talk about the future? And at that time, I was willing to go anywhere at any time to talk to anyone about whatever it is that they asked me to talk about. And on one occasion, I was invited by a board of directors to come and talk about membership recruitment and retention. And so I prepared my PowerPoint, I had my notes, and I was ready to have that conversation. And when I arrived at the synagogue, I learned the importance of preparation and understanding exactly what the context would be in which I would be speaking. Because at this particular synagogue, I was the last thing on the agenda of a regularly scheduled board meeting. So I'm flying from New York to another place. I get to the board meeting, and they talk about four things. Four things. They talk about a casino night, a parents' night out, a dinner dance, and a substantive financial matter within the religious school. Right? So why is it that this experience reminds me of the Consultants Institute? Because here we are 8.5 years later, and we're still having, for way too often, the same conversation. When we decided to do the Consultants Institute, and we're proud of it, right? Because we know that we have to be responsive. We have to listen to the needs of the kehilot, and we have to provide the resources that you ask for, right? So we put out the survey. We had 12, 15 options, and you were supposed to rank them. And the top 5 answers were not surprising at all. And I want to suggest that this is part of the problem. Number 1 answer, membership recruitment and retention. Number 2 answer, help us with PR and communications. Number 3 answer, help us with financial sustainability models. Can we talk about volunteer dues? Can we talk about dues? Can we talk about dues? Can we talk about dues? Number 4 answer, help us with fundraising. And number 5, leadership. Top 5 answers. Same conversation that happened that first year in that synagogue that I flew to. Don't misunderstand me. I know how important these topics are, but they represent a perspective and a starting point of save me. Save me. Because ultimately, they're about membership, which is about money. How can we get more membership so we can have more money? Because we all know what we're living is in a time in which membership is down, in which engagement is down, and therefore, in all of our synagogues, money is down. How do we maintain our fixed costs of physical plant, of professionals? How do we maintain our schools and pay our teachers and our youth directors? How do we get more members so we can have more money? There's a model of current reality that I first learned from MIT, from the Sloan School of Management. It's part of an educational process I did called Theory U, invented by Dr. Otto Scharmer, who's a professor of economics, actually, at MIT. And the model of current reality is called the iceberg model of current reality. Right? We know what an iceberg is, right? It is a huge piece of ice in water. And what's visible, the tip of the iceberg, represents only 10% of what we can see. And so the iceberg model of current reality posits that if all you see is what's above the waterline, then that's all you're going to react to. And if that's all that you react to, or if that's the only data that you collect, if those are the only types of questions that you ask, then you will continue to produce the results that by this point we all know nobody wants. So what do you have to do? You have to dive beneath the waterline. You have to see what's not visible, right? We know what's visible. There's fewer people under the denominational label. We have shrinking memberships, fewer children and young adults, an aging population, aging buildings, and less budget. But we're not going to fix those problems if we don't dive beneath the waterline and see what are the structures, the paradigms of thought, and the source of the community of this moment in time in which we are living. Diving beneath the waterline, seeing the totality of the iceberg, is what it means to be a truth teller and to tell ourselves the truth. And the truth is, exactly as my friend and colleague and teacher, Rabbi Ed Feinstein said, we will not find our way if we say, let's have better board meetings. We're only going to be saved if we start by saying, what is the truth of this movement, and how can we best convey it to a new generation? What is the truth of this movement? You don't have to look far to see it. It was visible in yesterday's Torah reading, Parshat Vayishlach. It's a tremendous story, right? We know it so well. Yaakov steals the birthright the week before. Esav threatens to kill him. Rivka, his mother, sends him to Haran in order to escape death. And there, he falls in love. He marries. He has 13 children. He's wildly successful. He's the Rumpelstiltskin of sheep herding. Everything he touches turns to speckled sheep. And 20 years go by, and he decides it's time to come home. And on his journey, he knows that he has to face his brother, Esav. And he's scared. He's scared. The last time he saw his brother wanted to kill him. And so what does Yaakov do? He sends gifts, tries diplomacy. He sets up his camp in a defensive position in case the gifts don't work and he can get away. Imagine being the part of the family on the front lines. And then he prays. And then he prays. God helps those who help themselves. Prayer comes last, not first. Then he prays. And in the middle of the night, he has this encounter that the Torah simply calls Ish, a mysterious person. And they wrestle. The Mefarshim, the commentators, the Midrash, reams of pages. Today, gigabytes of data are written about who is this Ish. Is it an evil spirit? Is it a river god? Is it Esav's angel? Or is Yaakov wrestling with himself? That's the one that has always resonated with me. Is Yaakov wrestling with himself? When he left Yisrael, when he left Israel and went to Haran, he was a liar. He was a denier. He was a manipulator. He was a runner. He was his namesake. He was Yaakov. He was a heel. And now he comes back 20 years later. It's a wonderful concept. Is he going to remain the person he was? Or will he face the truth of who he is and who he can become and transform into Yisrael? We know what happens. He does face that truth. He does wrestle with this Ish. He wrestles with what's real, what's beneath the waterline of his life, and he emerges transformed. His name is changed. He is now Yisrael, the one who wrestles with God and with humanity. That's the truth of this movement. We are wrestlers. We wrestle. There are no simple solutions to complex problems. We live in a world in which everybody wants to find a solution that can fit on Twitter, now 280 characters. That's not how it really works, and we all know that. There's no magic diet pill. There's no marketing and communications plan. There's no financial sustainability plan. There's no membership recruitment and retention program. There's nothing that is going to provide us with a simple solution to the complex problems of a world that is radically different than anyone we have ever known in all of human history, let alone Jewish history. We live in a time of rapid change. We are the horse at the innovation of the automobile, and now the automobile is driverless. And so we have to ask ourselves, are we going to be like Jacob? Are we going to remain Jacob? Who do we want to become? How do we want to live? And how are we going to model for our kids and our grandkids a life of meaning and purpose? Where it's more than just we wake up, we live a little bit, and then we die. But where, as one of the themes of this convention, where we mark the meaningful, sacred moments of our lives and we enhance them. We take what is mundane, what is whole, and we lift it up to kadosh, to what is sacred. As a people, how do we want to respond to a rapidly changing world? How do we do so in an authentic way? We live in an information age, an age of radical individual choice, of globalization, of identity politics, US and beyond, in Israel, of challenges of religious identity in North America and in Israel. Serious questions, such as intermarriage. How are we going to approach this? Right? How do we engage in conversation on the one hand when we know that the best way to increase the likelihood of transmitting this authentic Judaism to the next generation is a home in which two Jews come together and create a Jewish home, but yet on the other hand know that intermarriage is a logical outcome of living in an open society. And that it happens not just because Jews are willing to marry non-Jews, but because we live in a world in which non-Jews are now willing to marry Jews. How do we expand the tent and bring people, all people, who wish to journey with us in this proven, time-tested methodology of finding meaning in our lives into the tent? That's what it means to be inclusive. That, by the way, is what Klal Yisrael means. Or as my father said it to me the other day, I am Jewish, nothing Jewish is foreign to me. And we live in a world in which the communication of these ideas happens in seconds. On Monday, I live in New Jersey. So when I'm in New York or home, I commute into the office. Our offices are downtown now. So on Monday, I'm taking the bus from Caldwell, New Jersey to the Port Authority. And on the bus, I'm going through my Facebook feed, and I see a beautiful comment of what it is I'm talking about, what I'm sharing with you, from my friend Rabbi Aaron Alexander, who's now one of the co-senior rabbis of Addis, Israel, and Washington, D.C. And his comment is this. He writes that the genius of rabbinic literature, the most important compilation of post-biblical Jewish ideas, values, practices, methodologies, laws, and theologies, one of its most significant features is that later generations carefully and judiciously read current values and norms back into the actions and decisions of earlier generations to determine their validity and to forge new sanctity. What a wonderful definition of what an authentic and dynamic Judaism is. That's why he says Torah, in its broadest sense, is always relevant. And the way it becomes relevant is through the understanding of the layers that unlock new truths. So I was fascinated by this. I replied, Aaron, give me an example. 6.5 minutes later, Aaron gives me not one, but two examples. Just quoting the text. So I switch the apps on my phone. I go from Facebook to Sefaria.org, and I look up the two examples, and I read them, and I don't really get one of them. So I write back to Aaron. Aaron, I don't get it. Explain it to me. To which Aaron says, I wish I had the time. 30 seconds later, Rabbi Mordechai Silverstein from Jerusalem, one of the faculty members of the conservative yeshiva, explains the question to me. And while he's doing that, a woman whose name is Sarah, who I don't know if she's following me, I don't know if she's following Aaron, I don't know if she's following Mordechai, but she lives in Chicago and she's participating in the conversation too. And by the time I get to the Port Authority, there's now 22 comments and 65 people have viewed this. We created a bus Beit Midrash. That's how the world works today, right? We have a powerful message of how we make sense of a complex world, how we find shleimut, balance, wholeness in elements of our lives, in events that occur that sometimes not only don't fit together, but are in conflict with each other. Shleimut isn't nirvana. It's not some drug. It's not some magical experience where you can be sitting in the back of the room and a light will shine on you and you'll do backflips all the way to the front of the stage and put your hands in the air. I see the light. Shleimut is the hard work of wrestling with the reality of our lives and looking for value that adds meaning? What's the truth of our movement? And how do we communicate it? So here's the hopeful part of it. We know how to do this. We know how to do this really, really well. We just did it over Shabbat here at the convention. We're going to be talking about it over the next 3 days. And we have kehilot, both in physical structures of synagogues as well as outside of physical structures. Those that are affiliated with USCJ and those that are not, and even those that are purposefully not affiliated because they're not interested in denominational labels, but they share our values, our methodologies, and the way in which we live, that do this really, really well. I mentioned Addis Israel in Washington, D.C. Without a doubt, one of the most thriving communities in our movement. Now, I know what you're going to say, Rabbi. Addis Israel, it's a big synagogue. And they're in Washington, D.C. And they got a lot of money. How does that really help me? Well, my answer to you is look where Addis Israel was 10 years ago, when they were not in the place they were today, when they were asking the same questions of stress and anxiety and save me that so many of us, too many of us, ask today. And talk to their leadership, their rabbis, and their lay leadership that are here, and ask them what were the decisions and the steps that they took. How did they dive beneath the waterline, face their current reality, and then with determination focus on a set of new priorities that are about the truth of this movement, not just from the intellectual perspective of the Beit Midrash, but from the subjective perspective of what does it mean to help human beings journey through life with Judaism as their guide. By the way, that's what Torah means. It's shorsh, Yud Resh Hey means guide. And maybe the time has come, therefore, for us to stop talking about halakha, which isn't to say we should stop being halachic. Don't tweet that. That's not what I mean. But instead to start talking about hadracha, about journeying. And for our leaders, professional and lay, to start viewing themselves as madrichim, as life coaches and guides on this journey of living. And it's not just Addis Israel that has it. I can tell you about Beth Shalom in Elkins Park and the Center for Spirituality that they've built, whose goal, by the way, is shleimut, explicitly, about living a holistic life, to engage a broad spectrum where traditional entry points are not always open, and to engage people with the questions of meaning and purpose that promote spiritual, mental, and physical well-being and health. And they're not the only ones who have that. I can tell you about the Shalom Shuk at Ohavei Tzedek, a small community in Burlington, Vermont, who takes this notion of the truth of our movement and puts it into the world by creating a thrift shop whose customers are new immigrants and refugees, who, like our grandparents, came to this country with only what they could carry and not 2 rubles in their pockets, but helps them with basic needs and clothing and furniture and a network of a community that cares and that says you are welcome, you are valued. And we do this because we believe we are compelled to do this by being in relationship with each other, with Torah, and with God. And there's more. And they're all here. The reason we gather is to highlight the best of what we're capable of doing and to dive beneath the waterline, ask the tough questions, not necessarily have all the answers. USCJ is not going to give you a guidebook to how to create synagogues of meaning and purpose. There's no, manual. It's not like building something from IKEA. But we will journey with you. We will put you in a network with others that are doing it and asking the same questions and struggling and making mistakes and failing, but yet getting up and doing it again. And we will bring to the table experts in systems change and theory to work with you, to roll up our sleeves, and to ask, what's the truth of this movement? I want to say, by the way, it does mean better board meetings. But a better board meeting isn't a meeting where people don't throw chairs at each other. Better board meeting is a meeting that focuses on these strategic questions. Am Yisrael in Chicago did this. When Randy Horton, who's past president and co-chair of the last USCJ convention, came back from Sulam for presidency, he totally redesigned the board meetings. They begin with 30 minutes of study. At that time, they were studying the observant life. Rabbi Deborah Newman came and wanted the congregation to delve deep into the truth of this movement. So everybody on the board studied for 30 minutes. They spent 45 minutes on reporting, all of which had to be in advance, or you couldn't talk about it. They highlighted certain issues. They dealt with whatever action issues they had to do, and then they spent 45 minutes talking about the strategic imperatives of the community. How do we create more dynamic tefillah, prayer? How do we increase our capacity for chesed? How do we increase the number of people studying Torah, not in order to be able to recite chapter and verse, but for them to see Torah as a blueprint for living a life that matters? Our measurements of success can no longer just be the quantitative measurements. It's not about size of communities. It's about thriving. It's about energy. It's about health. It's about the truth. Another Blues Brothers quote, "We're on a mission from God." And USCJ is the network by which we create the partnerships and the collaborations, by which we ask the tough questions and search for the resources in order to respond to those questions. Yes, there will be toolkits. There will be marketing and PR toolkits. There will be financial sustainability toolkits. There will be membership recruitment and retention toolkits. There will be toolkits. We know it's important. But it's also important that we frame these questions around the notion of mitzvah. What does it mean to live in the narrative of the Jewish people? To be a part of that narrative, to create frameworks of holiness that allow for moments of transcendence, to face honestly and with courage the complex problems of our day, and to know with utter confidence that we've been here for thousands of years because we as a people in our DNA, we know how to do this. We know how to change paradigms, to extend and enhance moments of meaning. What we need now is the confidence of courage. The confidence of courage and a reminder of the importance of passion in order to accomplish. USCJ desires to be that platform for sharing and support, and sometimes for kicking the tush. For us together to wrestle with how to best engage a new generation. For shlemut, the outcome of wrestling. Peace of mind, peace of spirit in a world at peace. And by the way, a couple verses later, when Yaakov is approaching Shechem, the Torah says, V'yavo Yaakov shalem. Yaakov arrived whole, at peace. So let's get to work. I dare you.